Alright, so apparently the state of Texas over the last 20 years has become the nation's biggest group project. Except here's the thing, nobody asked permission, and somehow half the country just showed up with U-Hauls and strong aversions to taxes. Now, if you listen to Texans, it's all part of the big master plan. Lower taxes, more space, bigger stakes, and the kind of confidence you usually only see in people who think their high school football team could beat an NFL franchise. Now, according to them, it's basically paradise, with the occasional power outage and a deep emotional attachment to Buc-ee's. So, they pack up everything they own, they point their car towards Texas, and they join what is basically the largest ongoing relocation experiment in American history. In this video, we're breaking down the states sending the most people to Texas. Not just who's leaving, but why are they leaving? What's going on back home that sends them to the Lone Star State? And also, what do they think they're going to get out of living in Texas? Let's take a look. Number 13, Ohio. It usually starts with a U-Haul somewhere outside of Columbus. Not because everything in Ohio went off the rails overnight, but because it just didn't. Ohio is one of those places where life is fine. Jobs exist, things function, nobody's panicking, unemployment is about average, which tells you one thing about Ohio: we're doing okay, don't expect fireworks. But then Texas shows up like a loud cousin who somehow turned a decent job into 3 promotions. And that's where the story shifts. A lot of this Ohio to Texas pipeline is really about scale. Ohio has manufacturing, logistics, and steady industries, the kind that built the American middle class. Texas took the same idea and strapped a rocket onto it. You've got massive metros like Dallas, Houston, and Austin, where industries overlap like a pileup on I-35. Business services, healthcare systems, tech shipping, it's all stacking up on top of each other in Texas. And Texas makes it a lot easier. Then there's the money conversion. Ohio taxes aren't outrageous, but Texas walks into the room and says, what if we just didn't tax your income at all? For a lot of people, especially higher earners, that's not a small detail. That's the kind of thing that turns maybe someday into packing boxes next Saturday. And yeah, the climate plays a part too. Some folks just get tired of gray skies that hang around like they forgot to leave. Meanwhile, Texas is out there offering sunshine, heat, and the occasional weather event that looks like it was designed by a special effects team. So when you zoom out, it's not that Ohio's doing anything wrong or it's a terrible place. It's more like Texas built a bigger playground. Here's their numbers. Ohio to Texas inbound was about 13,455 in 2025. Outbound was about 8,797, with a net going to Texas of 4,658. Number 12, Arizona. This one's less of a dramatic breakup and more like someone just switching lanes on the same highway. Arizona and Texas are basically competing for the same category. Sun, sprawl, newer suburbs, people chasing that I escaped someplace more expensive feeling. So when people move from Arizona to Texas, it's not like they suddenly discovered warm weather. They already had that. It's more like well, let's go see what Texas has got. Now, Arizona's not exactly pushing people out with pitchforks. Taxes in the Grand Canyon state aren't really crazy. It's not some situation where people are fleeing a financial disaster. Life in Arizona works for a lot of folks, but Texas keeps dangling bigger opportunities. That's really the hook, the job market. Texas metros are just massive. Like I said before, Dallas, Houston, Austin, even San Antonio. They're like the economic buffet where you can change careers without having to change your entire life story. Arizona has jobs, sure. Texas has options, a lot of options. Then of course the tax angle comes into play here too. Arizona taxes income, Texas doesn't. That's not always the deciding factor, but it's like a coupon you didn't know you needed until you see the total at the checkout. Suddenly, Texas looks a little more appealing. Housing is the other piece here, and this is where people get tricked. Arizona saw a big price hike in real estate, and then everything kind of hit the brakes in late 2025. So it got really expensive, and even though it did kind of halt in 2025, those prices didn't go down. They're still pretty high compared to what it was 5-6 years prior. Now, Texas has had its own roller coaster when it comes to real estate, but they still have more options than Arizona does. So yeah, Arizona to Texas isn't about escaping something terrible. It's about looking at a place that's already pretty similar and then deciding that the other version just plays the game a little bit bigger. So in 2025, the inbound to Texas from Arizona was about 13,503. Outbound was about 10,306. So people from Texas going to Arizona. That net is about 3,197 more going to Texas. Number 11, Missouri. This one usually starts somewhere around Kansas City and St. Louis, where life is just decent. Missouri isn't a state that's falling apart. It has some spots that could use a little work, but nothing major. The Show Me State has always been a middle-of-the-map state where you can afford a house, find steady work, and not feel like you're getting robbed every time you pay a bill. But that's sort of the problem. At some point, pretty good starts feeling like a ceiling. So people look south. Texas shows up with bigger cities, bigger job markets, and way more room to move around career-wise. In Missouri, you might find a handful of solid options in whatever field you choose. In Texas, it feels like there's a new company every few exits down the highway. If you want to switch jobs without starting over, that matters. Then, of course, we always go back to the tax thing, and I gotta tell you, that's gonna be a theme for most of this list. The taxes are not crazy in Missouri, but Texas is gonna be a lot lower. When you're on the edge, should I stay in Missouri or should I leave? Getting that little extra bonus of not having a state income tax, yeah, that makes a lot of decisions for people. Texas has been pulling people from Missouri for years, not because one big event, just a steady pattern of more jobs, more growth, and more people saying, yeah, I think I'll try that instead. Now, from Missouri to Texas, their inbound was 15,134 in 2025. Outbound was 12,723. It's a net of about plus 2,411. Number 10, North Carolina. North Carolina is starting to catch up with Texas for the popularity thing. Texas is still popular, but it's starting to kind of fade a little bit. I shouldn't say fade, but their growth is kind of stalled a little bit compared to what it was 3-4 years ago. North Carolina is picking up that slack, but that doesn't mean Tar Heels are staying in North Carolina. They're heading to Texas too. Strong job markets, growing cities, companies setting up shop, remote workers showing up with laptops and opinions. It's basically two popular kids at the same table arguing over who has the better cafeteria. So why move at all? Usually comes down to small edges. Texas waves the no income tax flag in North Carolina's face also. North Carolina fires back with slightly different vibes, different industries, and maybe a city that just fits someone a little bit better. Housing doesn't really settle arguments here. Prices in both places have cooled a bit, but the prices haven't dropped. It just means the bidding wars aren't insane anymore. So North Carolina people, they're really not leaving that bad of a situation when they move to Texas. Normally it's just they had a different job there. In 2025, 15,679 North Carolinians moved to Texas, and Texas sent them about 16,498. So they had a net loss of 819. But still, 15,000 is a lot of people to head there. They just happen to be losing more. You ever notice how being healthy now requires 6 different shaker bottles and a morning routine that feels like you're prepping for surgery? I'm not a fan, especially those powdered drinks. That's why I like today's sponsor, Groons. This isn't just a multivitamin. It's your greens, your prebiotics, and nutrients all packed into one little snack pack a day. Not one sad gummy. You get a whole handful. Got a bunch more down here too. And they actually taste good. You're getting 20 plus vitamins and minerals, plus 60 ingredients that include nutrient defense and whole foods, way more than the usual basic multivitamin that barely shows up for work. Here's where it gets really interesting. Groons hits gut health, energy, immunity, recovery, and even cognition. It has 3 times the fiber of the leading green powders, plus super mushrooms that help your brain and, of course, your gut health again. You got vitamin C that helps fight off all the stress and junk floating around during cold season. Of course, there's biotin for healthier skin, hair, and nails. It's also vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, no synthetic junk, and you could choose low sugar or no sugar. And apparently, gummies absorb better than tablets. There's also more than 35,000 research publications backing the ingredients, so this isn't just guesswork in a bag. They've also got Groons for kids, so if you got kids, you could trick them into being healthy without negotiating. Bottom line, instead of juggling 5 different supplements, just eat 1 pack and move on with your day like a normal human being. If you've been putting off getting healthy because it sounds exhausting, this is probably the easiest way to start. And today, you can get up to 52% off by clicking the link in the description area below. Back to the video. Number 9, Washington State. In Washington, the conversation about moving doesn't start with money. It starts with a house. Or more specifically, the moment someone actually looks at their house payment and then looks in, Zillow and sees what they could get for that kind of money in Texas, That's when the decision is made. Because Washington's not doing anything wrong on paper. No income tax is great unless you make over $1 million, which that's a new law. It just came into effect, but it's not really even in effect. It's in courts right now. It just got signed by the governor recently. So we'll see how that plays out. But they both have strong job markets, big tech presence. It checks all the boxes, but the cost is what drives people out. Now, you're going to say, but you're only talking about Seattle. There's a whole nother state. Well, true, but most of the people moving to Washington or leaving Washington are coming from the Seattle metro area where a majority of the population is. The east side of Washington is a totally different situation. And where most of those people are coming from is the Seattle-Tacoma metro area, and it is expensive up there. And you start looking at the home prices in Texas, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you could swap out the rain for the heat, why not? Culturally, they're very different. Weather, they're very different. Job opportunities, very similar. I think besides the home prices, the other option you have is they've got like 4 big metro areas where Seattle really has one giant one. Then they got Spokane. Spokane's not that big. Really, it breaks down to probably the weather and the home prices. That's about it. Here's the numbers. Inbound in 2025 to Texas from Washington was 15,937. Outbound was 16,202. So they're losing to Washington also. That's a net of about 265 they lost. Texas lost, I should say. Number 8, Virginia. Virginia is another state that is actually losing people to Texas. Virginia's doing fine, and that's the thing. They got good jobs, good government contracts, defense work, all serious adult stuff. Unemployment is low. Nobody's running through the streets yelling, "We must leave immediately." This isn't a story of collapse. They both have very similar industries. They both have a lot of professional services, defense connections, and of course, government jobs. But the big difference is going to be the weather, and Texas, again, doesn't tax their income. No state income tax in Texas. And I got to tell you, being in Oregon, that's starting to look more and more attractive all the time. If I could just handle that heat, I'd be doing it. You also look at the real estate. Most places, especially around the bigger cities, the real estate's going to be a little bit cheaper in Texas. When you get into the rural areas, Virginia versus Texas, it's going to be a big difference. It's a lot cheaper in Texas. Here's their numbers. Inbound to Texas in 2025 from Virginia was 17,996. Outbound was 15,476. That's a net gain for Texas of about 2,520 residents. All right, so we get to number 7, which should be Oklahoma, but I've eliminated it because it's right next to it. In neighboring states, they're always moving back and forth, and it's not that big of a deal. It's when you got to cross other states to get there, you're going there for a reason, not just because you got tired of the town you're in. So, number 7, Georgia. Yep, surprise, surprise, the Peach State is moving to Texas. This one is less of a mass exodus and more like 2 busy airports trading flights all day long. Yes, you've got Georgia on one side, Texas on the other, and people constantly moving back and forth like they forgot something in the other state. This isn't one of those everyone's leaving situations. It's more like a steady shuffle where both places keep winning. Now, yeah, Georgia taxes income. And Texas doesn't. On paper, that sounds like Texas should be cleaning house, but real life isn't a spreadsheet. It's more like a group chat where nobody agrees and someone always is making questionable decisions. Both states check a lot of the same boxes. Big growing cities, strong job markets, logistic hubs, business services, and all the stuff that keeps a good economy humming. Atlanta's not exactly sitting in the corner hoping someone notices. It's a heavyweight. Texas just brought 3 heavyweights as backup. So what actually makes someone leave Georgia and head to Texas? A lot of it comes down to job fit. Not just I need a job, but this exact job with this exact company is happening in Texas. Or Georgia for that matter. That kind of thing pulls people more than tax rate ever will. Then of course you've got family. A family will ruin a perfectly logistical financial decision every single time. You could show someone a chart proving that they'd save $8,000 a year in Texas and they'll go, yeah, but my mom's in Atlanta. And that ends the conversations. No debate, no appeal, case closed. So this Georgia-Texas thing isn't about one place beating the other. It's more like 2 popular states constantly swapping people, because depending on your job, your family, or whatever mood you're in that year, either one could be a perfect fit. Here's their numbers. Inbound to Texas from Georgia was 19,481 in 2025. Outbound was 20,968. So Texas sent 1,487 more to Georgia. Number 6, Colorado. My first thing is, if you're living in Denver, main reason you probably moved to Texas from Denver is the homeless situation. It's gotten pretty bad in Denver. But here's the thing. A lot more people are heading to Colorado from Texas than Colorado's sending to Texas. And it breaks down to what people want. And a lot of people get tired of that heat. And they get tired of that flat land they got going on in Texas. I mean, outside the hill country, which compared to Colorado is flat. Even though both states have a lot of really nice things to do outdoors, Colorado with the Rockies there edges them out. And that's a big reason people will move to Colorado from some of the more desert states. If Colorado's housing prices dropped a little bit, this number might increase by a bunch. Here's their numbers. Inbound to Texas from Colorado was about 22,986. Outbound to Texas, 27,574 in 2025. So Texas lost about 4,588 people to Colorado. Number 5, Illinois. This one's a little bit surprising. I didn't think Illinois would be this far down the list. I thought they'd be on the list, maybe around 12 or something like that. But number 5. Illinois is a consistent source state in U.S. domestic migration, meaning they got people flooding out of that state and, they're showing up in places like Texas and Colorado. And believe it or not, yes, California. To Illinois residents, Texas reflects a classic combo: taxes, housing burdens, and chasing faster growing job markets. That's why people head to Texas. Chicago is a great city with some pretty rough spots, no denying that. But you've got 4 major cities to look for a job in Texas. But the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people from Illinois heading to Texas is Illinois has a flat state income tax rate. Texas has none. Also, it's Illinois. Illinois gets pretty cold, and a lot of people that have been cold for too long, they start looking at places like Texas going, that place is starting to make a lot more sense. Here's Illinois' numbers. Inbound to Texas was 23,509 residents. Texans heading to Chicago, that was 18,189, with a net gain for Texas of 5,320 residents. All right, now we get to number 4. Number 4 is where Louisiana should be, but it gets the same fate as Oklahoma. They're neighboring states. It really doesn't make sense. So we're going on to the real number 4. Number 4, New York. Yes, New York. Believe it or not, people are leaving New York. Actually, a lot of people are leaving New York to the point where they're worried they're going to start losing congressional seats. That's how bad it is. And it's not just New York City. It's the entire state. These people have been taxed to death for a very long time, and a lot of them are done. They're just tired of it. You go to one state, it's extremely tax heavy, and then you look at Texas and there's like no taxes. When I say no, I mean compared to New York, yeah, it's a real thing. Again, the weather, the taxes, the affordable housing, it's all better in Texas. You just got to deal with the fact that you're in Texas, and Texas is a nice state. It's just not everyone's cup of tea, especially if you're coming from the Eastern Seaboard. One of the biggest shares of New Yorkers leaving for Texas is coming from the city, New York City. A lot of people can now work for New York firms and work remotely. And so people start going to those less taxed states. Texas is one of them. And trust me, Texas got a lot of New Yorkers in 2025. Inbound to Texas from New York, 28,233. Outbound from Texas to New York, 16,324. That's a net difference of plus 11,909 for Texas. So yeah, that's a good chunk. Number 3, Florida. Now this one totally makes sense because the people in Texas and the people in Florida are very similar in their political ideologies and their disdain for taxes. A major push for Floridians heading to Texas, though, is the different things going on with their insurance and their climate risk costs, as they're calling it. They've been having a real bad problem with their insurance rates there. A lot of insurance agencies have just given up on the state. Hurricanes seem to be getting more frequent and more powerful. I don't know about frequent, but they've definitely got more powerful. And this has caused a lot of problems for the state when it comes to cost. But the pull factors to Texas are huge job markets, proximity for many households already in the South, and a different set of housing and insurance trade-offs. They both have no state income tax, so that's kind of a wash. Here's their numbers. Inbound to Texas from Florida in 2025 was 52,219. Outbound from Texas was 45,259. That's a net of about 6,960 more going to Texas. Number 2, California. Now, I'm sure a lot of you thought California would be number 1. It sort of is. There's a little bit of a surprise here at the end. But California over the years has been the biggest offender of the overpopulation of Texas. Not like it's overpopulated, but they're trying to get there, and a lot of that has to do with Californians. Now, here's what's really strange about that whole migration to Texas from California. Almost 30% of the people going to Texas from California are coming back home. Basically, their parents or their grandparents moved from Texas to California for jobs, whatever they had to do back in the day. And now they're just going back as they start to raise a family or whatever, and California kind of cools off. A lot of them have been going back basically home to Texas. So they're getting their own people back. But no matter how you look at it, they're just getting a ton of Californians, and they have been for a long time. We're just looking at 1 year here. This influx has been going on since early 2005, I guess. But they're not the worst. Inbound to Texas from California was 77,161 in 2025. Outbound to Texas, 45,447. So Texans are still heading to California. But their net, Texas gained 31,714 more. All right, before we get to number 1, if you have not subscribed to this channel, we'd really appreciate it if you would. Leave me a comment, big thumbs up. You're the man, or woman for that matter. All right. On to number 1. And number 1, foreign countries. Yep, I threw them all in one bucket at the end. It's really not a state, but it kind of tells you how the migration is going in Texas, and these numbers will shock you. 35.9% of the people moving to Texas are from foreign countries. That was in 2025. Now, there's a big caveat to this one. Foreign countries is not just one country. It's the entire planet outside the US rolled into one single line item. So if you were hoping to dunk on one nation, sorry, you have to wait till the next video. There's no villain here. But analytically, this tells you something big. International migration is a massive component of Texas's inflow. Why do people move to Texas from other countries? Well, large job markets, strong immigrant community networks in major metro areas, and industrial demand. Here's the other thing. Only 1/3 of those people are coming from Mexico. Since this one's a bucket of all the countries, we don't have the numbers going out to each individual ones, but the inbound to Texas in 2025 was 314,614. That's a lot of people. All right, were you surprised at any of this? Let me know in the comment section. And if you got time, watch another one of our videos. They're being suggested right now. Everyone have a great day. Be nice to each other.